So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hi, villains, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. We didn't do a podcast last night, and I'm going to be really honest. I didn't have it in me to lead the podcast last night. I was perfectly happy to sit there and be asked questions about the transfer window, but it was a long day yesterday, expecting something to happen, and then nothing happened. And I think I speak for myself. I don't speak for anyone else, but when you look on Twitter and you hear everybody go, Villa won't sign anybody on transfer window day, until the club actually says it. I think every single one of us cling to the hope that at 10:59 on transfer deadline day that somebody will come through the door, but it didn't happen. And Paddy is here to join me tonight to talk about the transfer window activity, and certainly the lack of activity that we had in the last week of the transfer window. And yeah, I suppose that's probably the best place to start, Paddy. Talk to me about your feelings on it and what you think. Talk to me about it.
I sent you an article today. I think it was Greg Evans. I sent you the snippet from it, and the word he used was flat. I think that's how I feel about it. But I'm still glass half full because while I am feeling a bit dejected that we didn't get some quality in, I'm happy that we didn't go and buy some of the drivel that some of the other clubs have bought in order to fill their squad. So I don't want to see a situation in 18 months' time where we've got to offload the people that we offloaded in this transfer window in order to balance the books and get them off the wage bill and get them out of the building and into, into hopefully a window where someone's going to buy them. So we need to be buying players that are of the quality that's going to drive us into Europe and not to fill the squad. But the reason I'm flat is that we didn't manage to get another one or two in to drive us on. And that's it. I think we're a little bit light and that's why I'm flat. But having said all that, I'll keep going back to the fact that we don't have fillers. We don't have guys coming off the bench now where we go, oh, this fella's a shit show. God knows what we're going to get here. I don't want to call people out and name them, but you know who they are. We had one recently that we had to fill in, and every time the ball came to him, we all cringed and then put our hands in our laps and feared the worst. That's what we don't want in our squad. We want players who are ready to step up to the plate, push us on, and push us into Europe, because that has to be the next step. And another reason I'm flat is I believe that Europe is attainable. It's not completely unattainable at this stage, but I think with another couple of players, we could have really pushed on. I do think there's a number of clubs above us that, with a couple of injuries, could easily just float like a cannonball and just drop below us very, very easily. So that's the way I'm thinking about the whole thing. I've gone on for a couple of minutes, but that's exactly how I feel. So forgive me if I'm not bubbly and effervescent, but on the other hand, I'm still glass half full.
Yeah, look, I think you'd be doing well to find an Aston Villa fan that if you gave him truth serum and put him onto a lie detector machine, that wouldn't say, yeah, look, I would have loved another striker. I would have loved another striker to come in here, maybe another winger, because I think that's what the squad probably needs to be that's what the squad needs to be filled out at this moment in time. And when we're talking about filling out, I think I would feel happy with a striker. Do you know what? I would have felt happy with two strikers to come in here, another young striker, and maybe if we got a 6-month loan for somebody who could come in and contribute straight away off the bench, maybe an older head. I'm thinking like somebody like an Eden Dzeko, obviously not that exact player, but I'm thinking a player who can come in, is a wily old fox, and bridge the gap if that was something to happen. Because and Paddy, I'm actually on the same boat as you. You told me before this podcast we wouldn't be on the same on the same train, and we absolutely are. Because I didn't really know Paddy's. Well, I knew Paddy's views, but he's never articulated them to me from his mouth. It's all been through text message over the last 24 hours. So I kind of feel the same as you. I think we're probably a striker light. For various reasons, form reasons, our strikers, the former strikers have had over at various
we
times.
two strikers light because we've got two players up there that aren't really strikers. So
well, yeah, that's but like that's a furrow that we've spoken about previously as well. Yeah. But
the wily old there, I think you mentioned who did you say?
I said Aiden Dzeko or somebody like that.
I saw Everton going for Giroud yesterday, and
that was never happening.
He would have been perfect for us if we'd have got that to happen.
Everybody knows
that was just my opinion. Obviously, he's at the back end of his career now as well, so it's it wasn't one for us. But I heard the news yesterday with us not signing anybody. I went, fuck, if we'd have got him in on loan, that would have made a huge difference for 6 months.
I think so too. I think so too. And I'm going to take a look at something in a moment, because what I did was I took the liberty of writing out what the squads were prior to January the 11th. Why January the 11th, Neil? Why pick an arbitrary date of January the 11th? Because that's the date that we signed Alex Moreno. So before we signed anybody, and then after the transfer window shut, I've taken the liberty of looking at the two of those. But I want to discuss, I suppose, what our feelings are first, because I've done a lot of thinking about it last night after doing the Villa View and after doing Spaces, and I wanted to listen to other people's thoughts. So get that. I know I like to talk an awful lot, but yesterday I just wasn't in the mood, and I wanted to listen to hear what other people were saying, because I was pretty much not my normal positive self at about 8 o'clock yesterday evening, and I needed somebody to tell me it was okay. Or I needed somebody to tell me potentially it could be okay, if that makes sense. And it's okay to admit that. So that's why we didn't do a podcast last night. But I've completely lost my train of thought now where I was going with it, trying to do the disclaimer as to why
I admire the fact that you could actually go and talk about it last night, because I just went to bed because I was just totally deflated. I got a text message at 9:15 to say the shutters are down, we're gone.
Yeah.
The place was closed up, so there was nobody coming in at that stage. There was nobody even in the offices of Villa Park or Bodymore Heath. So I was just like, that's me gone to bed. I was flat. I'll keep using that word. I was flat, but yeah, I was deflated. I was deflated last night. It was a bit better about it this morning, but it is disappointing. I think there's so much we could have done, but on the other hand, I keep reiterating the fact that I'm happy we didn't buy shite and be stuck with them.
Yes, this is what I wanted to get back to. You mentioned there that, and this is probably where we kind of differ in our views. And it took, like, as I say, I would love us to get into Europe. And I don't think that while we've got the manager we have, we should ever write that off specifically. With you mentioned about getting into Europe and about a chance to push on. I personally think that Chelsea and Liverpool are going to finish in the top 6, and that the top 7 is going to be City, Arsenal, or not in this order, okay? City, Arsenal, United, Newcastle, Liverpool, Chelsea is going to be the top 6, and then Spurs are going to be in there as well. So, like, I don't know what order they're going to fill in, don't tie me to that. I think that's what the top 7 are going to be. I think Brighton, Fulham are going to come back to the to the mean, and I think we could have leapfrogged them. So I think with a couple of signings, we could have finished 8th. Maybe got 7th, and I mean maybe that's if Chelsea just didn't gel at all. But I agree.
But 7 or 8 could have got us into the Conference League.
Yeah,
and with that, it's easier to attract players, and that is the whole thing behind my train of thought with this.
Agree.
If we're even playing Conference League, you get the up and coming players to go. I get to play in Europe with Aston Villa, a Premier League team. That'll do for me, but I don't want to see us pick up a couple of injuries and finish 16th, which could very easily happen. So I don't believe it will happen. I'm just saying it could very easily happen. I think we'll finish probably somewhere around where we are now, but I do expect the Arse to fall out of a couple of the teams above us. I'm not going to name them.
Yeah, so and I think that could happen too. I also think that with our recent run of form and our recent trajectory, that I think we can go at the weekend. Spoiler alert for our preview tomorrow, but I think we can go the weekend. We can win, which gives us another 3 points. We have a game in hand on Fulham. I think it is. I think Fulham
We're a
have
game
played
of hand
3
on most because we haven't played Leicester yet. That was the game that
Oh,
was
yeah.
cancelled when the Queen died.
Yeah.
So we've to play Leicester twice, which because we're down the bottom end of the table, it doesn't really matter to rearrange it, and they'll rearrange it when it doesn't suit either of us. So, but that's another bugbear of mine. So we have that game in hand over a couple of them, I think, that we could potentially catch. But like we're 3 points off sixth. I think if we got ahead of the Brentfords, the Fulhams, the Brightons,
Yeah.
we could easily get into Europe. And I don't buy the argument that getting into Europe will kill us. That's a load of rubbish.
I don't either. Yeah, I especially the Conference League, even with the early starts for the Conference League, because I think that's kind of like the Intertoto. You can use that as a tune-up session, you know.
Absolutely, and it's pre-season, and it's getting minutes into the legs for other players who might be on the periphery, depending on who we're drawn against. So there's a whole lot there. You can't say getting into Europe is a bad thing, no matter what it is. It's like saying getting into the Champions League is a bad thing. It's a load of shit. You know, you want to be at the top of the game. You want to push into Europe and make them spend the money to get the players to survive, have enough back up there to be competing at that level, and to fill the park an extra 3 or 4 or 5 nights and bring more money into the coffers, and with the new stand being built. So there's loads of reasons why we wanted to be in Europe, but I just think it's going to be a little bit beyond us now.
Ah, damn it. I wanted to go into transfer market, and I wanted to see when even players that we had out on loan, when their contracts were finishing up, but they've moved them all off transfer market already to their new teams. So I'll try and find that in a moment. Just interesting because obviously Freddie Gilbert wasn't going to be here. We ripped up his contract, we let him go, and so on. And
Be happy said this is the Leicester game from last year. The Leicester game that was cancelled last year was away.
This is the Leicester game from. This isn't the Leicester game. No, this isn't the rearranged one from September when the Queen died. No, it's not. No, this is the
a scheduled game. Yeah,
this is the scheduled game. Exactly. Yeah. This is the scheduled game. So let's take a little look at the squads. Okay, calculators out, guys, because I've just remembered I forgot to do a total squad number here, and I know that there's a little bit of artistic license in this, so bear with me. And there's reasons for it. Context is king, as we like to say on this podcast. Context is king. Well, I like to say it anyway. I say it on the transfer podcast and the scouting podcast, should I say? Not specifically this one, but talk amongst yourselves there, because what I want to do is I want to bring up some slides that I've done, and of course, they're taking forever to load on the screen, just as I do this, because I can see method to madness for letting some players go. Also, I want to, like, as I say, there is a bit of context that I want to try and bring, because as I said, this is called Transfer Windows Thoughts and Things. So I don't know if any of this is exactly what went on in the boardroom for obvious reasons. I don't know whether this is going to be a successful plan or ploy, but what I want to do is I want to maybe just try and reason things out, because as I said, I did a lot of listening to people. I did a lot of reading of other people's thoughts yesterday, and as I say, some things made sense to me, you know, when we looked at it. But anyway, let's take a look. So here we have it, ins and outs, and I've included some loan players of guys that were never going to see the light of day in a Premier League game this season. The likes of Louis Barry was never going to see the light of day in a Premier League game this season. Aaron Ramsey was never going to see the light of game in a Premier League game this season, nor was Lamar Bogart. But still, we popped them in there. So what we can see here is we have 10 people went out in over the course of the transfer window. Ings, Nakampa, Gilbert, Sanson, Augustinson, Bednarak, Bogart, Archer, Barry, Ramsey. There was obviously other loans as well, but they were kind of, I suppose, the names that went out. Of those players, realistically, when we look down at every single one of those players, Danny Ings was the only player that got meaningful minutes for Aston Villa. I think that's a fair statement to make.
Yeah. And the only other one, in my view, I'd have kept, people may not agree, is Bednarak. Because I think, you know, if we picked up more injuries, I'd be a little bit worried. But look, that's just my opinion. He didn't get enough games, and I'm sure Southampton needed him back as well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that was a case whereby now Bednarek was apparently on 60 grand a week as well, and we were picking up those wages. I'm going to go into something like that in a moment. I don't have it on slides. I just didn't have time to put it on slides, but it's an interesting thought process. So what we're going to look at here is a lot of people say that our squad is an awful lot lighter in numbers than it was prior to yesterday or prior to the transfer window. That's not strictly true. Well, it is. It is. We are lighter, but it's not strictly true that we're an awful lot lighter. We'll take a look at it. In is John Duran, Moreno, Bertie's come back, and Kane Kessler Hayden, who I have to say, I'm going to talk a small bit about Kane Kessler Hayden, if you don't mind, Paddy, because before a ball was kicked in anger in the Premier League this season, coming back off the Australia tour, people were genuinely talking about Kane Kessler Hayden usurping Matty Cash before the year was out. So having him back in the team is a viable player. He's not. He will be with the first team. He will. And I read today that Swill Svinkels or Sil Svinkels has been training with the first team all week as well. So just an offside comment there with regards to Svinkels. But anyway, so this is where we are. It looks bad. 10 people out, 4 people in. Obviously, the numbers don't match up in that instance there. Now, when we look at it here,
you forgot your mate.
Courtney House can't walk at the moment, though.
He's still back.
but he can't play for Aston Villa. They're the PF, the whatever the PFL or whatever the players union is, trying to negotiate to see what he can actually do, because at the moment, Watford aren't going to register him, or they haven't registered him. If they don't register him, apparently there's something about, because he's on loan, that there's some hoo-ha anyway with regards to his treatment. And apparently if Watford do that, then they don't have to give him X amount of treatment, and they only have to give him a limited amount of treatment. But that will actually mean that it'll take a 6 months of a recovery, whereas if he gets the better treatment, it'll be a lot shorter. It might only be a 2-month recovery. So it's all about player welfare, and I fully back Courtney House. As I say, I would love to have him back in there, and if we did have him, it would negate the Jan Bednarek, I think, situation of having a player that would cover a body, should I say. So here's the squad pre-January the 11th. I have put in here fitness adjusted here. I have no idea why I put in there. Why did that sound good when I was doing this? So bear with me in that one. So we've got 3 goalkeepers in Martinez, Olsen, Jed Steer. Yes, it was because of Jed Steer. We've Young, who covers right back, left back. Cash, who covers right back. Digne and Augustinsson, who are 2 left backs. Mings, Konza, Chambers, Bednarek, all 4 centre halves there. We had Dendoncker, Kamara, Nakamba, Luis, McGinn, Ramsey, Sansom, Buendia, and Coutinho, who are all midfield players, whether they're wide players, whether they're 10s, whether they're 6s, whether they're 8s, whatever you want to call it. They're all playing in and around the midfield area. And then we had 4 players that played up front. We had Ings, Watkins, Bailey, and Archer. Okay, so that's and that was our squad. Obviously, we had young players with Caden Young, who came in and out. He's still here, doesn't count to the 25. That's fine. We had the likes of Lamar Bogard and all those on the bench. These are the players that played meaningful minutes for us. And Archer is even a stretch, to be honest, here, because he's got no real game time this season at all. So when we look at it from this point, from the point of view of our squad as of yesterday, I think the argument is less that we don't have numbers, that we're down so many numbers that we're a threadbare squad. I think the argument is we are lacking quality as opposed to bodies. And the reason being is we're only 1 player less off after post-January the 31st than we were on January the 11th. We're only 1 player less off, and that's a midfield player. Based on, obviously, Bertie's going to come in, and I'm taking artistic license. I understand here with Carlos, who's due to return mid-February, start of March, and that Bertrand Traore is going to be a forward, joker, maverick, wildcard player, whether it's the wing, whether it's going to play up top in a number 9 role. I know I'm taking artistic license with regards to that. But from a bodies point of view, when you look at the bodies, and I hope I haven't made any mistake in this, we're only 1 player down. Now, the argument for me, and I fully agree with anybody who makes this argument, is we've lost quality in the striker department, because we've lost that Cameron Archer, who I feel is the potential to be a quality player. We've lost Ings. I don't think we've lost quality in the midfield, in the Kamba and Sanson. I don't really think we've lost quality in that midfield position. Talk to me, Paddy. Am I...
Oh, well, like it's arguable whether we should have kept Sanson around when we didn't get Guendouzi, but
I fucking
uh,
get them, I bet you.
yeah, the main worry for me is up front. I'm not worried about midfield at all. I'm slightly worried about centre half if Carlos takes a bit longer to come back. We've John McGinn coming back from injury. He's back on the grass today, so
Mm-hmm.
it's another one coming back. Just really worried about injuries. When you look at Bertie, tendency to be made of glass. Bailey goes down a little bit too easy for me. Watkins fine. Duran we don't know enough about. So there's just a little bit of a fear that we won't have enough up top. And who do we fill it with? Do we put Coutinho up there? Do we end up putting Ramsey up there if we get that tied up there? Bertie's going to be another few weeks. Obviously, Carlos is going to be another few weeks. I think we're okay at the moment. We'll pick up another couple of injuries, then we're really, really threadbare.
100%. And arguably, we were threadbare prior to the 11th of January if we got injuries as well.
Yeah.
But I suppose to look at that, what are the numbers there? 3 and 9 is 12 and 4. So we've got 23 players, albeit 3 of those are goalkeepers. We've 20 outfield players. Caden Young is obviously going to make the bench a couple of times this season. It'll be interesting to see if Svinkles is the man that comes in and makes the bench as that extra centre half. He's been somebody who's got lost in the mix. I'm not a fan of relying on the kids like that to pad out the squad in an injury crisis. I know some people are. I'm maybe a fan of one kid, but when you start to see 3 and 4, it reminds me of the era where the likes of Jonathan Hogg, Chris Hurd, Isaiah Osborne, all these guys were getting runs in the team, and they clearly weren't good enough to play for Aston Villa at that period of time. Indiana Vasilev, we go back to those types of players. It's great to have our own, don't get me wrong, but to throw somebody in who's undercooked is not fair to the player himself. Now, they could have a Marcus Rashford effect, whereby they come out of nowhere, and next thing, all of a sudden, they grab their chance with both hands and become a brilliant player, but they're unicorns. They are unicorn-type players when that happens. And as I say, I think the biggest thing is the unknown aspect of our striking department is completely unknown. We've no idea what Duran is going to be like. We've no idea what Bertie's going to come back and play like in this setup, and that's scary because you need to score goals to win games. You do need to score goals to win games.
Yeah, and in fairness to Bertie, he's got his goals. He's got his valuable goals at times, and he's done the unthinkable on the pitch at some times. It just doesn't do it often enough for me. So, while I'm happy he's back, I think it was an important number to get back in the door. But it just keeps Bailey and Watkins on their toes, and I think that's important. Yeah. That if you're very light in certain departments, players get comfortable because they know they're virtually untouchable, and we can't have that either. Not that I think Emery will let him away with that either.
No, I don't think so. I think under the previous regime, yes, you could see it happen. I just highlighted a comment there from Marine Boy. Ashley Young can play as a striker. He's played everywhere else. He actually started off as a striker for Aston Villa in the number 10 role behind John Carew. At times when he first came into Aston Villa. And look, hey, I'm not going to sit here and say Ashley Young can't play anywhere. I'm expecting him to stand in for penalty kicks at some stage before the season is out. So I've been bitten by that one before, the saying that Ashley Young can't do something. He's gone back and thrown it in my face. So yeah, absolutely, I think. And this is another interesting one as well from Gin JVFC 96. Can we please remember that we've 18 games left? That's one game a week realistically. We will be fine. I hope we're fine, but you could get 4 injuries in one game. Yeah, and that look, it's as likely that we get no injuries as it is that we get 4 injuries over that time. But I suppose the one thing is it's a variable that we can't control. It's like the weather; we cannot control injuries, and I was going to say it's like VAR.
It does average out at one game a week, but you're going to have obviously that Leicester game has to be shoehorned in there. You're going to have FA Cup weekends where we're due to play someone that's still in the cup, and that'll have to be moved. Yeah. So at that back end of the season, it's the equivalent of playing European football when you've got those games thrown in there. So that's why the getting into Europe never bothered me. If players if we've enough players and enough quality players, we shouldn't be worrying about players getting tired or injured or anything like that, because we'll have plenty to back up. But that'll come in the summer, maybe
so. Now, let me bring these slides off because I want to talk about another piece. I said this is thoughts and these are things. I don't know if any of this is true, but I think there's a hypothesis and a theory in this, Paddy. And I want you to talk to me on this. If like take it for what it is. This is likely not the reason that we didn't spend. I think Greg Evans came out today and said there was money there to spend. Emery chose not to waste it. Wanted to bring it into the summer. And I asked the question yesterday. I said, why the hell do people do that? Why do teams save it for the summer? Like, if you want him in January, get him, amortize it over an extra 6 months and see what happens. Now, a great point was made to me, and oh Jesus, I'm so sorry, I don't have the names of the people that made these points to me. Marco was one of them yesterday, and he spoke about. He said that with regards to financial fair play, and yes, I know people are going to talk about the Chelsea model. Bear with me in a moment, and we'll discuss that in a second. In our financial, so when we first came up, we obviously had a massive operating loss, huge operating loss for that year between the players that we bought, the lack of funds that we had. We were also after every penny that the club made went into paying off debts for the previous regime and so on and so forth. Obviously, we had the owners who come in who were pumping money in. There was X amount of money they could pump in. Over the course of that year, up to May 2020, we had an operating loss of, so depending on what one you take, and I don't know what one is taken for financial fair play because the new owners bought Villa Park for, I think it was 50 million. So we either had a 69 million euro loss or £1 million loss, or we had a 105 million pound loss. Now, I'm led to believe that the 105 million pound loss is the one that's taken for the numbers. So essentially, when you balance up financial fair play, that's the last year. So that year's still on our financial fair play slate at the moment. That drops off on the 31st of May this year. So essentially that 105 million loss noose around our neck, shocking phrase, I know, and I try my best not to use it, but that's what it is. That drops off. So the headroom we have for spending money increases. Now, it's very specific that I talk about this summer. And I think this summer is really specific as well, because in 2024, there is going to be new financial fair play laws that come in that dictate that it starts off that you can only spend 90% of your income in wages, then 80% of your income, and then it drops down to 70% of income over the course of 3 years. So essentially what the club could be looking at here is, if we give ourselves that financial fair play headroom of an extra 105 million by not blowing the bank and trying to tighten our belt in January, which no one likes to hear, and I don't want to hear it either, because the club should be able to spend something in January, even if it was 3 million on Moussa Dembele. So don't get me wrong on this. It's not an excuse. It's a theory. If we go in with that extra 105 million headroom into the summer, in a summer whereby potentially it could turn into a Wild West situation for some teams that have been smart enough to bank that money, that don't have the income of a Chelsea or a Man City, then we might be likely to see the money spent, the likes of maybe a 45 million on a Nico Williams, or a 30 million on a Guendouzi, and another 60 million, or whoever. I don't know. That's my theory. Paddy, what do you think? Is that a harebrained theory, or could there be some merit to that as well?
To be honest with you, about 18 months ago, I stopped paying heed to financial fair play when Man City were able to get off their European ban.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it only applies to those that sit below the supposed Super League, European Super League teams. They can buy their way out of it. So I honestly don't know what it means anymore. If they can just have enough money to buy their way out of it, I don't know what it means. And to be honest, I've lost complete fucking interest in it because it's a farce. And Chelsea had a transfer ban reduced. What's the point in giving them a transfer ban if you're going to reduce it? So all of these things just lead me to believe that, you know, Europe and the Premier League need these teams who are heavily supported all around the world, all around England and Ireland, that are heavily supported. They need those fans spending money on Sky Sports, on tickets, on any subscriptions that are there. So they're protected. And I don't believe if we really blew financial fair play out of the water, we wouldn't be as protected. So I honestly don't know what it is. I don't know. They're finding ways around it. Chelsea went absolutely gaga giving out those long contracts last summer, And only now they're talking about closing that after the horses bolted. Why
Yeah.
did they not do it last September? I'll tell you why. Because it was Chelsea and not Fulham or Aston Villa or Bournemouth. Because they need Chelsea performing. There's millions upon millions of fans throughout the world who are supporting Chelsea, and they need their money. So they're overprotected. FFP only applies if you're poor. So I honestly have no interest in talking about it.
Yeah, the whole point, though, as I said, was that could be a theory as to why we wanted to give ourselves headroom, because maybe
Yeah,
we're
I
like, it
totally get
looks
what
like
you're
we're the
saying. Yeah.
fools that are acting within FFP. Now, it like the income for the club at the moment, the club isn't bringing in an awful lot of income outside of game day receipts,
Mm.
and like we're not set, like we saw Jack Grealish, whoop de do, like we don't sell players that for massive amounts of money. It's game day receipts. Chelsea, in fairness to them, game day receipts, massive sponsorship deals. I'm not going down the road of sponsorship deals tonight. I really don't have it in me. So I don't know will I ever have it in me in the podcast to do a sponsorship deal, to do it about this sponsorship deal. When it's released, we might rethink it again. But the commercial aspect of a Chelsea or a Man City is like the earning power of them is like we're nowhere near that. And when we look at, I suppose, financial fair play, we can't buy our way out of financial fair play. And I agree with you, Paddy.
Yeah.
That's why it keeps the poor poor, and that's why it keeps the rich rich. And look, that if we are to play within the rules, I think that could be a reason whereby we could look at it. Because if you think about it, Christian Purslow did mention when we first got promoted, he spoke in terms of like Bournemouth can outspend us comfortably because they've been in the Premier League for 3 years. And he meant 3 years of the reporting for financial fair play when he spoke about that. Because he specifically talked about the 3-year period you needed to be in the league. Now, look, I know we're probably following rules and teams like Chelsea and Man City aren't. But if the club is following those rules and we don't have the means to spend above our means without getting loans from the owners, and to be in a situation whereby if the owners did decide that they were going to toss the everything overboard and fuck off back to use their money somewhere where it's not going to be going into a money pit,
Mm.
we don't want to be in a situation where we're like, yeah, okay, right, we're an unsaleable asset because we've got 700 million worth of debts to our owners, and our owners aren't willing to write it off. Like a Mike Ashley, we don't want to have something like that. I'm not saying that's going to happen. It's completely hypothetical. It's completely theoretical. So it's just something I thought I'd bring up because maybe we're playing to those rules, and maybe it
Yeah.
might be a reason why. But we do
There's a
know there
couple.
was money. There was
There's
money
a
there
couple
to
of
be
things.
spent, and it wasn't spent.
There's a couple of things we need to do to be eating at the top table. I went to Spurs on New Year's Day, as you know. The day
Yes.
before, I did a tour of the stadium. I tried to count how many people were in each area at any given time, and there was at least 100 people in about 6 different stops along
Yeah.
the tour. That's 600 people paying, I think it was 25 quid for the tour. I'm not joking you when I tell you that was 70% Koreans
Over
all there
for
for Heung-min Son.
yeah.
So maybe we need to go and buy someone like Lee from Mallorca who are linked to it. Someone along those lines that will bring in. I went to Morocco in August. ZH jerseys absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the cheap ones you buy at the side of the street. Every one of them had the real McCoy with ZH on the back of it. It's just all these things are money spinners. We just haven't, like, the first thing I saw us do to compete along those levels is John Carew and John Duran speaking Spanish.
John Pablo,
Well,
Juan Pablo
sorry,
Angel,
Juan
yeah,
Pablo Angel and who are both are capable of speaking good English, but we
yeah.
did it in Spanish. So maybe the tide is turning with that, but we don't know how big of an asset John Duran is going to be. But I'm just giving you an example. If you go to any of these, like if you look at Man City after they score a goal, we don't have the limbs that we have. Fellas falling over the whole thing, over the seat in front of you. They've about 4,000 people with their phones out like that taking
Yeah.
pictures and videos. That's just the way it's gone. They're the guys that are rocking up and spending the big money. They're coming from all over the world and spending
Oh yeah,
huge money on
100%.
season tickets that they don't even get to use, that they're selling back to Man City. Like my family are Man City season ticket holders, and they will tell you that things have changed beyond recognition since they first got those season tickets 15, 16 years ago, whenever they moved into the city of Manchester Stadium. So there's a load of things we can do. I think that video was the start to have it in Spanish.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot more we can do, but I think we need to attract a huge player from somewhere in the world that's going to give this influx of interest into our club. And when you have them, you keep them. All those Korean fans that were in White Hart Lane, they're sports fans for life now. You know, you have them. They will come even long after Son is gone. So, look, that's just my humble opinion. I think that's something we can work on.
100%. Oh, that was a big thing when I did the transfer or the scouting pod on Yi Kang Ying. I dedicated a whole 2 pages to the Valencia sporting director, basically saying this is a huge money spinner to have this guy in the academy. Not even after he didn't even make his debut for the club at that stage. It was a huge money spinner for Valencia. They said it's just a beauty that this guy's a good footballer on top of it. You know, you look at Chelsea or you look at Celtic. Celtic is like the Orient in the north at the moment, and that's a compliment to them, because what they've done is they've thought outside the box. Longer they've gone from going and trying to pick up journeyman Premier League or Championship players. They've said, oh, hey, we brought in a guy who coached over in the J League. Let's go and exploit the hell out of the market over there that seems to be completely untouched other than the German market, because the German teams have been doing that for years. They've gone away. They've bought half the Japanese international team, and they're absolutely flying it. And I can guarantee you the commercial impact on Celtic Football Club from having, is it 5, I think, or six Japanese players at the moment? The commercial impact there.
5 Japanese and 1 Korean, I think.
Yes, they did. They signed the Korean guy. The commercial impact on that is going to be massive, specifically if they actually do anything in the Champions League at any stage with those players in the team. This year they didn't, but you know, that is a consideration for sure. Absolutely. So I'm glad that you mentioned that as well, because my whole wrap it up in a bow talking point and why I mentioned that theory is having that headroom may be beneficial for us at the moment, because our earning power, our income is not really, you know, it's nowhere near comparable to the top 6 or the top 7 clubs within the league. Do you want to know something as well here? Another thought that I had, and somebody had this written down. If you're watching the podcast, you had an absolutely brilliant thread on Twitter, and I am so sorry that I have forgotten your name. And it's so sorry, so much so that I'm so sorry that I'm actually going to Matt Burton was his name. And Matt went through and he had, once again, this is going back to financial fair play. Don't shoot me. It's a theory. It's not an excuse. But it's going back to specifically the Danny Ings move, and the Danny Ings being on the wages he was on. And what Matt calculated out, that Danny Ings contributed to almost 10% of between the amortization of his contract of his purchase 18 months ago from Southampton and the wages he was on, he contributed to almost 10% of our entire financial fair play budget, if this was going to be the new rules in 2024. And obviously we're playing by the rules, because they're the rules. We don't have the money to buy our way out of them. And that just blew my mind. But he did the calculation. I've linked the tweet. If you go back, you find it under my like tweets. I've liked it and I've retweeted it. It's just a really interesting way of thinking of something like that as well. Danny Ings may not have been contributing to us in minutes in the field. Yes, he had 6 goals, but potentially the club was looking at it from this point of view. If they were looking at this financial fair play ceiling and to give us more wiggle room in the summer, which I seriously don't believe they were, it's just a theory, that he makes a really good argument. Yeah. Coutinho is probably costing about, so you double that, maybe 15%. But we couldn't get rid of Coutinho. The reason he mentioned Ings is because we were able to sell Ings, and plus we sold him with a 15. So we were able to amortize his cost, plus bring 15 or 12 million or whatever it is back into our income pile as well. So we couldn't get rid of Coutinho. I'm sure if we got rid of Coutinho, this would have been a really good, interesting study as well. But I think it would be about 15%. So between 2 players, potentially we would have had somewhere in the line of somewhere between 20 and 25%, maybe.
Don't know if this is true, but it just made me giggle there. If Matt Target is getting 100 grand a week.
Yeah. I don't know if Danny Ings is getting 120 either. You know, a lot of people go and the numbers I quoted, just the numbers from Capology. I'll tell you a story about Capology. They have John McGinn at earning 27 or 22,000 per year. I sent them an email, made up a figure that John McGinn was earning. 2 days later, they had changed the John McGinn's earning based on my email to them, and now it's changed again. So maybe they've gone and they've sourced what it is exactly, but. I made up a figure and I told them, and it did change to that. I remember Paddy, I messaged you. I said, let's see what happens here, because I'm always skeptical of sites that are able to quote exact figures for salaries in the Premier League, because no one knows. No one knows it. There, it's all guesstimation and so on.
I saw a friend of mine renaming them on Twitter. What do they call Capology? Is it? He called them Bollocksology.
Well, look, they may like they're very new. They're very new to the market. They came from an American base whereby agents release the earnings of their players, as in the overall contract numbers in the NFL, the NBA, and all that, because it's seen as a status thing. Like, you always want to be the next guy who gets the biggest contract. Whereas, you know, you hear murmurings and rumblings and stuff like that in European football, and it's not really released unless you're John Arnorisa and somebody posts a picture of your wage slip that they found when they were picking up your bin or something along those lines. Remember that? And it was ridiculous, the amount of tax that he was paying. I think it was something like he was getting 80 grand a week or whatever like that, but he was paying well over 40 of it, 40 grand a week in tax. Anyway, this is not a budgeting podcast, but it's just an interesting one. As I said, it's thoughts and things, just throwing stuff out there. I have no idea whether it is, but it's something to worth thinking about. Paddy, have you any other thoughts on I suppose the window? Because realistically, we're going to draw a line under it, because guess what? There's nothing we can do unless we bring in somebody like Isco who reneged on his move, or who Union Berlin reneged on the move for, or we find some guy who's on a free transfer. Because even if people get their contracts torn up now, am I right in saying, Paddy, that they can't sign for us? They can't sign outside of the window if their contract is torn up outside the window.
If it has to be torn up before 11 o'clock last night for us to sign.
Yes. Yeah. That was my thought as well.
Which is how they got that Matt Doherty one over the line without he didn't even need to do a medical until today. They just announced it. So yeah. So I think the only, like, I sent you that message yesterday about Isco. You hadn't even realised that he had had gone pear-shaped with Berlin. So he's one that's out there that I felt could have done a job for us on a short-term basis. Somebody will snap him up, I'm sure, but I don't think there's too many Iscos out there.
I think. Okay, right. Who really wants to get the tinfoil hat on here? Coutinho. There was a thing out there today to say that Coutinho could still move. I don't know how. I didn't read it. It was a headline. If anybody could tell me that, is there still a transfer window open somewhere?
It had to be done by 10 o'clock tonight, so that's done. He can't.
Is it? Was it? Okay.
As far as I'm aware, if he moved to any of the countries that were till 10 o'clock tonight, 11 o'clock European time, he could have gone. But we couldn't sign anybody from those countries, but he could have gone. So that's passed. Are we there?
Yes, because there was talks that potentially he was going to go back to Brazil. And could you imagine if, like, I would say, you get Coutinho goes with his $250,000 a week, and Isco comes in. I think it's a like-for-like replacement in a lot of ways.
The thing is,
treading.
If it is Brazil, it's not 10 o'clock at night there yet. As Conor Hennessy will tell us if he's there. So it's only about 8 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So they could still do it, but it's unlikely. I think he'll probably keep him on now at this stage.
Yeah, but as I say there, that's like, if you're really clutching at a straw as to how we could have a signing come in here, that's the one. And I think that's the only way Isco comes in to sign for Aston Villa. I would even be a bit kind of tentative of saying, okay, having Isco and Coutinho, they're on a similar trajectory with regards to their their play. And also, if you really want to go by it as well, Coutinho was brought in because he was mates with Gerrard and played with him, who gave Isco his debut for Valencia back in the day.
Unai Emery.
You said it, Unai Emery. But Unai Emery also sold him to Malaga then. Well, he didn't sell him, didn't want to sell him. Malaga triggered a 6 million release clause, and then he had to go. But Unai Emery gave him his big break. So look, there's nothing going to happen in that. We're not breaking news. There's nothing in that. I'm saying that that's a hypothetical. That's the only hypothetical way I could see a free transfer coming in anytime soon. But if you think about it, and we were talking about financial fair play, I would imagine that will be a massive saving on the balance sheet, because if you think of the players that we've let go already, based on those numbers from Capology, and I do hold my hand up and say that potentially some of them may not be true, we have broken out at 820k per month, and nobody wants to hear about that. Spend the money if it's there, but there's potentially, as I say, I'm making a theory here that we're creating a lot of headroom for the summer, to spend money, and if we don't, I'll be less understanding than I am now. Put it that way. If we don't spend in the summer, because we obviously need players in the summer.
Connor is there, so he might tell us what time locally that transfer window closes in Brazil.
Connor Hennessy paging Connor there in Brazil. What time does the transfer window close?
This question has been asked a few times, Neil. If you want to address it, how many of the first team will go in the summer?
Well, let's bring up our thing here again. So I think Robin Olsen will go. I think Jed Steer will go, and I think Sinisalo, and we'll bring in another goalkeeper. So I think that's two players that will go there. I think Chambers will go. Yep. I think Coutinho will go. I'm going to throw one from left field. I think Bailey will go. I think somebody up there will go. I think somebody like that. There'll be somebody we won't expect. So I don't know. I didn't count there. What's that? 2, 3, 4. I think 5. I think 5 of the players that we see there in the screen will go. I think we'll add players in. Potentially Dina might go as well. Who knows? But I do think we will see changes. And I think most of the changes will come in the defensive side of things. And I think there'll be more additions to the... Bertie will go, I would imagine. Once he's come back and done his 6 month stint with us, I would imagine he will go, unless he turns into peak someone who's good. My mind isn't working at the moment.
I think if there's a taker, then Donker goes as well.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, but you'll hear me say this an awful lot in the summer. Make sure you've the players in as well. Make sure we have a healthy balance of players coming in and players going out. We don't want to be in a situation, as I say, where all these players go out and then we're filling holes with with players afterwards. So all in all,
I think we're heading for a big summer anyway.
Yeah,
I think he's going to have to, in order to compete and push on, he's going to have to bring in. I'm going to hazard a guess at 5, and I think that will mean at least 3 going out of what's there, possibly more. So in order to have that 25 plus our homegrown players in there, I think Jacob Ramsey goes out of that next year, doesn't he? He has to be classed as one of the 25.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. Someone saying there that Ashley Young might retire. That's possible too.
That's what.
Depending on how the next 6 months goes.
If he does, we will still see him with an Aston Villa jacket on, I would imagine, in some way, shape, or form.
Connor Hennessy reckons it closes the middle of March. Maybe that's internally. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it was 10 o'clock tonight. Was the if you were signing someone from Europe, that you had until then to do it.
Yeah, as I said, hey, nothing's going to happen. Right? It's not going to happen. We will not get notifications on our phones before we wake up tomorrow that Coutinho has gone to Corinthians or whatever the story is. It's not going to happen. We're just spitballing. As I say, it's called transfer window thoughts and things. It's a complete another throw it at the wall and just talk about it for tonight. Yeah, so look, I suppose all in all, look, going back to, and we finish on this, Paddy. Look, it's not the end of the world. I think like we started off the podcast, both of us, and we were saying that, look, it's frustrating. We would like to see more quality and more bodies come in there. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, it's not really the end of the world as we stand at the moment. As we spoke on the podcast, we kind of both agreed that we were that if we think we were light with injuries now, then that means we were probably light with injury if we got injuries prior to January the 11th. With the makeup of the team, albeit that we had a recognised striker in Danny Ings there. But, we're not a million miles worse off than we were. I think it's quality that's missing. And the players that have gone out, the Sansons and the Cambas, the Bednareks, the Augustinsons, they only offered us 347 minutes over the course of this season so far. So, that's not an awful lot. And Danny Ings offered us 830 odd minutes over the course of the season, which is out of 12,501 minutes that we could have had. That was like 10% and 9.36% is what that was of the minutes. Now, you could say that he was underutilized. I completely understand that as well, because there is an argument to be made there. But so when we talk about it, the bodies are gone, the contingency is gone, the actual level, the effort and field from a minutes point of view balances out, I think, as well. But we, and as I say, we have Unai Emery as well, which is a trump card too, I think, based on all available evidence that we have.
And just, I know people will be saying that I'm downbeat and disappointed. I just think with 3 points off sixth place, it's possibly a missed opportunity. But if you can't get the players in, you can't get the players in. He's only, realistically, how many games has he played? 9? 10? Emery? I've lost track.
7.
So he's very early into this project. So we shouldn't be in this situation, but we've turned over managers in the last few years. So I'm optimistic for the future, but I am a bit disappointed that this could be a missed opportunity, because we won't see Chelsea and Liverpool performing as badly as they have done. They will push on, and I just think we could have at least picked up a Conference League place.
Yes. Look, and that's a fair thought process to have as well. I think we would have needed to be lucky, I think we would have needed to be lucky to get there.
But if you look at the trajectory we're on, if take out the 2 games that are coming up after Leicester, there's no reason why we can't go and beat any team in this league. Obviously, we've got 2 shit games against Man City and Arsenal, but I expect us to go and give them a rattle, as it will with any team that we play over the next 3-4 months. So, there's no reason why we still can't get there, depending on what happens above us. So we just got to keep going the same way we have, and put the belief in the manager and get behind them. And it's important for us as fans not to be too downbeat and to get behind the team and the manager over the next few weeks, because they're going to need us, especially at home.
Absolutely, we're on the cusp of a good thing with Unai Emery. We're on the cusp of a good thing, and as I say, we could be down in the mouth for a short period of time and say, yes, we should have strengthened, and that's absolutely fine. You're not wrong to think that if you do think that, and you're not wrong to think that, okay, it's good to keep your powder dry. I think it's various. I think when I speak about wanting us to strengthen, I would have just liked us to have another striker come in, a recognised striker, and a mediocre deal, or maybe a loan striker or something like that didn't break the bank. I'm not looking for us to go and spend 150 million on somebody just from a specific numbers point of view. I think that would have been good, but happy to go with what we have. Unai Emery has worked. He's worked genuinely has worked magic so far in what he's done. I'm interested to see the likes of Arsenal, Man City come and see if they can break down their 6 at the back, 7 at the back, or potentially our 9 at the back when we play them in the upcoming weeks. But we'll get over Leicester first, and I think we go to Leicester this weekend, and we can still be very buoyant, and we can go there with a game plan and a tight knit team and a good manager. And we said it an awful lot when Gerrard was here. Gerrard didn't improve any of the players that has come in here. And I think one thing you can put in the absolute positive box, and you can't underestimate it, is Unai Emery has improved quite a lot of players incrementally, but he's improved the squad nature, the squad coherency, should I say it, and the tactical cohesion, should I say, within the team as well. So you can't buy that. You can train that into teams as well. So look, it's not the end of the world, but we might be saying that if we finish 19th. We'd be revisiting this if we finish 19th come the end of the season, which I obviously know that we're less likely to do.
No, well, there's no
Um,
danger of us going down. I
no,
said to
not
you,
at all.
I
No,
said
no,
to
no.
you last night, or this morning, whatever it was. It's the difference between finishing potentially 6th and potentially 14th, which
Yes.
could both easily happen. But and regardless of what happens, it's next year that we need to be aiming towards. But as you start to get a bit older, that gets very annoying. They're having to say
Yeah.
that every year. It's another year lost. Another year lost because we put the belief in Slippy G and fucked us, set us back another 12 months. So anyway, there you
Yeah.
go.
You're in your 57th year, Michael. I'm in my 37th, and absolutely, I am 100% doing an Emery supporter. 100%.
And I'm right in the middle.
And I think everybody is. Yeah, you're right in the middle. So we're, so 37, 47, 57 there. So, and as I say, I think that is a good way to end it. You know, I will absolutely support Unai Emery, regardless. It's not in question. I think he can work wonders, and I think he has worked wonders in all the available evidence. But what he's able to do with the players that he has at hand, it's going on longer now than the new manager bounce, if that makes sense. There's something there. He's found a formula, and it may change and it may tweak, and long may it continue under a very good manager. And hey, let's see. As I said before, Bertrand Traore comes in, scores 2 goals, gets 2 assists. That could be really, really beneficial between now and the end of the season as well. So we'll see, because I expect us to be involved in low-scoring games at times this season, which is good, which is a good thing. Anyway, guys, we got to go. It's 10:30. Good God, I said I'd only be doing this. I'd only do this for like 15 minutes, but it's been a good conversation. Hope you all enjoyed it. As I say, look, things didn't pan out the transfer window the way that we would all like. We all like a bit of excitement, but Leicester coming up this weekend, and Aston Villa welcome Leicester. And as I say, we will be back with some sort of a pre-match show tomorrow. I don't even know if you're available, Paddy, but I'll be going with a pre-match show of sorts tomorrow. I don't know if you're around. I should have checked that with you. So join us again tomorrow at 9:30, guys. Thanks so much for that. It's been really good conversation. Sorry we couldn't get to all your comments. You guys have really chatted it out inside there as well, and there's been some really good ideas in there. But thanks a million for watching. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, regardless of who's wearing the shirt, we will always shout up the Villa.
Up the Villa.